I love Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Super is a different story. In my last video, I broke down my biggest issues in each Dragon Ball Z saga, so I thought it's only right for me to follow up with the video about my biggest problems in each saga for Dragon Ball Super. Explaining Dragon Ball Z was easy. 4 major sagas, 4 major problems. But for Dragon Ball Super, not only are there more than 4 major sagas, but there are also 2 different versions of the story up until a certain point, and I'm not going to skip over any of it. So it's only right that I start from the beginning with the Battle of Gods saga. Now, if you've been watching me for a while, then you know that Battle of Gods is my favorite Dragon Ball movie of all time. I think it's an interesting story that did an excellent job of ushering in the modern era of Dragon Ball. The story of Battle of Gods was told 3 times, in the movie, in the anime, and in the manga. The manga's adaptation is only 4 chapters and serves as more of a recap than actually adding anything on to the Battle of Gods story or any of its characters. We get to see some really cool panels, but that's about it. Now, the anime is a different story. By no means do I think the anime adaptation was bad. My only gripe is that for the Battle of Gods movie, there's a section where the cast is just enjoying the party with Beerus. There's a good amount of jokes and funny moments, and in the movie that may have been 10 minutes of screen time. That same section was too long in the anime, but outside of the pacing, I don't have any problems. The story is essentially the same as the movie, so I don't have any problems there either. The anime adaptation of Battle of Gods is often grouped in with the Resurrection of F saga in terms of being movie retellings. However, the Resurrection of F anime adaptation is significantly worse. I'm already not a fan of the movie, so in order for me to enjoy an anime adaptation, there would have to be some sort of added value to the overall story. Unfortunately, that is not the case. With the Battle of Gods anime adaptation, we get a more clear gauge of Goku and Beerus' power, and the story expanded on Beerus' character. You can make an argument that due to the horrible pacing and animation, the anime's version of Resurrection of F diminishes the overall opinions on the movie as a whole. It is just bad, no 2 ways around it. The saga was a shameless cash grab, and that is the biggest problem I have with it. Just because the villain is Frieza, the most iconic villain in the franchise, Toei thought it made good business sense to terribly reanimate the movie. And I don't know the actual numbers, but it probably did make the company a lot of money. Fortunately for manga-only fans, Toyotaro could see that retelling this story did not need to happen and decided to skip over it entirely. So the next major saga in Dragon Ball Super was the tournament against Universe 6. And here is where fans really start to see 2 different continuities in Dragon Ball Super. The overall framework for both tournaments was the same, but how the characters fought was slightly different. Goku uses the God forms in a new and interesting way, but there wasn't the great moment of Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken like the anime. I think that moment is very underrated. It's one of my favorites in the entire franchise. Now, my problem with the manga version is that the fight against Hit was a little too fast. It seems like I'm nitpicking with that choice because I am. The fight with Goku and Hit was so good, and for Goku just to quit was a little disappointing. For the anime, I find myself having a nitpick there too. At the time of its release, I criticized this arc for not being exciting, but in retrospect, this arc doesn't do anything wrong to me. Yeah, it's not out of this world great, but there isn't one aspect that I can look at and say that it's responsible for the arc's problems. The Goku Black saga, the Zero Mortals plan, I don't really care what you call this arc. What I do know is that now I have to do 2 breakdowns because the manga and anime versions are vastly different. For the anime, the most glaring issue was Trunks. He's a fan favorite, and even I was excited to see him come back into the story, and I think his introduction and just the overall exposition of this saga was executed well. Episode 47 is one of the best in Dragon Ball Super. The tone of the series shifted so drastically and for the better in my opinion. But Trunks' power at a certain point was too convoluted to ignore. When he first came back to the past, Super Saiyan 2 Trunks had a clear place in the pecking order. From how he ran away from him, he was clearly weaker than Goku Black, and obviously weaker than Goku and Vegeta. But after he does this, it's hard to tell exactly where he stands. I think it's still reasonable to assume that he was weaker than Goku, Vegeta, and Goku Black, but by how much? Was he like Super Saiyan 3 level, Super Saiyan God level, somewhere in between? It was just hard to determine. At one point, he's clearly significantly weaker than Black, but then has moments where he overwhelms Black, and to top it all off, he's the one to destroy Zamasu's body. We don't even know exactly why this happened to Trunks either. Super Saiyan Rage? Wasn't Super Saiyan initially unlocked through Fury? Why did Trunks get this unique form with this blue aura? To me, it was a lazy way to power up a fan favorite character so he could have some memorable moments. Goku Black quickly became too strong for Trunks to reasonably catch up to, so he was just thrown a new form. I would have been okay with it if we ever gotten a real training session between Vegeta and Trunks and not just a one-off of them outside. But we didn't. Now the manga is different. I prefer the manga version up to a certain point. There's no Super Saiyan Rage, Vegeta uses the God forms in the most interesting way I've ever seen, and then a certain sequence of events occur. Zamasu fuses. That happens in both versions. Goku and Vegeta fuse. That happens in both versions. They unfuse. That happens in both versions. But after that is where the stories begin to diverge. Goku goes on to fight Merged Zamasu by himself using perfected Super Saiyan Blue, and my problem here is similar to my problem with the anime version of this story. It's hard for me to believe Goku can fight Merged Zamasu alone. Forget the fact that they could duplicate, I know that Super Saiyan Blue Goku struggled with just Goku Black alone. So you're telling me that perfected Super Saiyan Blue is that big of a jump? Forget Goku using Hakai out of nowhere, that doesn't even bother me. It is just hard for me to go along with Goku having that kind of jump in power out of nowhere. Now I understand that it is extremely difficult to write a story where 80 characters are all active at the same time. Dragon Ball has never been known for its outstanding writing or attention to detail, but the power creep in this tournament was insane. The manga handled it well, but the anime? Oh my goodness. Kale and Khalifa's progression was nuts. Goku and actually every Saiyan in the tournament was progressing too fast.
48 minutes. That's all we were given for this tournament of power. We Saiyan warriors have shattered our limits, time after time.
And I love the speech that Vegeta gave about the Saiyans in the tournament. It's truly inspiring, but the power creep was insane. And now that I'm at the last arc of the anime, that seems to be a consistent theme. Dragon Ball Super's anime has an issue with power scaling. And speaking of Super's anime, that's the end of it. Now we're getting into the manga exclusive stories, and the first is the Moro Arc. The Moro Arc in Dragon Ball Super is a pretty wild ride, blending some elements from old school Dragon Ball Z with the higher stakes action we've come to see from Dragon Ball Super. The story kicks off with the introduction of Moro, an ancient goat-like sorcerer who's as menacing as he is cunning. And when I was reading it month to month, you couldn't tell me it wasn't one of the best Dragon Ball sagas of all time. Moro was and is still one of the most interesting Dragon Ball villains in a very long time. What makes him and this arc stand out is how it plays with the idea of magic versus raw power, something we haven't seen much in Dragon Ball since the early days. Moro's ability to drain life energy and absorb power puts the cast in a tough spot, forcing them to think beyond who can just punch the hardest. We saw Goku train to master Ultra Instinct. Vegeta went out of his way to learn an uncharacteristic ability. Even Piccolo and Gohan displayed some teamwork moves that were new. It was just a refreshing twist that added a new layer of strategy to the battles. Different characters had their own unique paths, plus we got more information on the Angels, the Grand Supreme Kai, and Majin Buu. However, the arc isn't without its flaws. The story takes many elements from different points in Dragon Ball history, but I'd say the most glaring ones come from the Cell Saga. Absorbing androids to get stronger, having the ability to use other characters' moves, losing power and reverting to a previous form, threatening to blow himself up when he's lost. Cell did all of those things. Cell threatened the Earth after Gohan dominated him in their fight, and Goku took on the responsibility of dealing with Cell and lost his life in the process. A noble sacrifice. Though for Moro, the situation was slightly different. Gohan and Cell only fought once. Goku faced off against Moro multiple times. He knew exactly how dangerous he was, so giving him a sensu and asking about training wasn't something that I think worked in this situation. I know the action itself fits Goku's nature, but in the past, Goku has been forced to put an end to those who he deems as irredeemable. Am I supposed to believe that Moro deserves a second chance more than Frieza and Kid Buu? Stop it. During Goku having this fireside chat with Moro, things take an unexpected turn and now Goku is stuck. And here's where my problem arises. Goku did defeat Moro, but he only got the win because somewhere in a village far, far away, there was a kid who possessed an unreal amount of power. That's okay, but how did Goku know what kind of attack to hit Moro with? Whis. Whis flat out gave the answer to Goku, and that sucks. Period. Now the last saga in this video is the Granolah saga, and I think the main problem is the result of Granolah not being a very convincing antagonist. His thirst for revenge was valid, I guess. The wish to become the strongest was wild, but cool. Don't have an issue there. But about halfway through this story, Granolah gives up on his quest for revenge against the Saiyans, therefore a new antagonist has to appear, and that would turn out to be Gas. There is nothing interesting about Gas. His backstory only consists of this interaction with Bardock that is still confusing, and sooner than later, Gas turns into this beast who can't stop getting stronger. Going back and reading this arc, you realize that if Frieza doesn't show up and add an interesting storyline, this would have ended terribly. Gas as constructed was not built to be the main antagonist, simple as that. So those are my problems, but I'm sure most of you have different opinions, so let me know down in the comments what the biggest problems in each Dragon Ball Super Saga was for you, for both the manga and the anime. And with that being said, if you haven't already, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this. This is BigTune, and thanks for watching. Y'all have a good one.